Hey everyone, Matt here from Docs Running, and today we're going to do a comparison review of the Nike Zoom Fly 6 and the Adidas Boston 12. Now, both these shoes are quite similar. Both of them are lightweight trainers slash performance trainers that have been around for a while. The Zoom Fly has just recently moved into this category, as before it was, even though it was supposed to be there, was fairly heavy and clunky and not a shoe that we really have reviewed for a long time. The Boston, on the other hand, has been here for a while. This is a great shoe that's an alternative racing shoe slash training shoe that works for a wide variety of people. The Zoom Fly 6 just recently moved into this as it dropped a ton of weight, redesigned the shoe, and both these are really excellent. And because they're so similar, the purpose of this review to help you figure out, hey, if you're interested in either one of these, which one might work better for you, because there are some differences you should pay attention to. As always, we're gonna start off with specs. I did my measurements in my men's size 10. So the Zoom Fly 6 is coming in so much lighter than previous versions. My size 10 is coming in at 8.9 ounces at about 254 grams. Over in the Boston 12, my size 10 is coming in at 9.2 ounces, 9.3 ounces, or about 262 grams. So both of them are very light. Stack height wise, Zoom Fly is just a little bit taller with a 40 millimeter heel, 32 millimeter forefoot for an 8 millimeter drop. And I will acknowledge, I've seen some different measurements out there. That's the one I got from Running Warehouse. The Boston 12 is coming in at 35 millimeters in the heel, 28 and a half in the forefoot for a 6.5 millimeter drop. So still somewhat similar, but there are differences, as I mentioned. So in terms of ride, although they have a similar setup, the Boston 12 is a tiny bit more flexible because the carbon fiber rods certainly are snappy, but there's just a little bit more give there, which makes the shoe feel a lot snappier, whereas the full weight carbon fiber flight plate over in the Zoom Fly 6 feels much stiffer. So when you transition, the Zoom Fly 6 feels a little bit stiffer. The Boston 12 feels like there's a little bit more give, but it's much more snappy. And that's partially because the midsole over here, the Lightstrike Pro and the Lightstrike, is way more bouncy and responsive, whereas the Zoom Fly 6 is much softer and a little bit more comfortable, honestly, for daily training. I've used both these for a ton of stuff. I've got about 35 miles in the Zoom Fly. I've got well over 100 miles in the Boston 12, so I know this shoe really, really well. The Boston has been excellent for everything I've thrown at it, with the exception of some long runs. For me personally, most people are going to be absolutely fine, just because this isn't quite as stable as the midfoot, whereas the Zoom Fly is just a little bit more stable overall, just because it's a little bit wider. There's a central groove here, and there's a little bit more stiffness side to side that just makes it a teeny bit more inherently stable. Neither one of these are stability shoes, but the Boston 12 is way more snappy. I've really enjoyed this shoe for a variety of workouts, and really will say that if you want the true shoe that has the great versatility in racing and workouts, the Boston 12 is going to edge out the Zoom Fly 6 a little bit, but the Zoom Fly 6 has a little bit more versatility into easier runs. The Boston 12 can do easy runs. I found the Zoom Fly 6 to be a little bit more comfortable doing that, despite being a little bit stiffer. It's also got a little bit more of a rocker. The forefoot rocker is a little bit more gradual, whereas the rocker in the Boston 12 is a little bit more aggressive, and so kind of works a little better for being snappy. The Zoom Fly 6, again, isn't a bad shoe for workouts. It can certainly do faster efforts, and I have enjoyed it for that. The Boston 12 just has a little bit of an edge for that, but like I said, this shoe has a little bit better versatility into running easy. I've done plenty of easy runs in this shoe. I've done a hill workout, I've done track intervals, and a tempo run, and it's excellent for that. It just doesn't have as much pop as the Boston 12, but does roll quite a bit more comfortably. So again, a little bit better for if you like a little easier runs, a little bit better if you like faster runs, but both of them can handle a huge versatility of runs and are also very excellent options if you say don't work well with maybe the Nike Alpha Fly or the Adidas Adios Pro 4. These are really good shoes that do a little bit better job of not being as aggressive or maybe as unstable as those ones, but still can really turn over and can certainly do races as well as they do workouts, and can do some daily training very, very easily. So way more versatile in that range. I mentioned the guidance and stability. Again, Zoom Fly 6 is a little bit better than the midfoot. And overall is a little bit more centered. The Boston is a little bit more biased in directions. So heel is something I really do well with, where it's very laterally biased. So people that need a little bit of heel guidance and go to medial, this can be a great option. But then you have the extension of the rods that I talked about before that really shoves you inward. So if you roll out too much of the midfoot, this is a great option to push you back. And the forefoot's fairly well centered in classic Adidas style, whereas the Zoom Fly is much better centered throughout the length of the shoe. There's not bias in one direction. It's not overly stable, but it just doesn't push you in either way. It just keeps you fairly centered. So if you don't want any kind of bias, Zoom Fly 6 is going to be better. If you do want things in certain motions, or if you don't, you either are going to enjoy the Boston or you may not like it. That's going to really depend on your unique mechanics. The last but not least thing is the fit, which is also different. So the Zoom Fly has a more anatomic fit. The toe box is much more rounded. The Boston 12 has a little bit more of a pointed fit. The forefoot in both these actually has plenty of room. The toe box is where things are really different, where there's more room over here and a little bit less, but the volume is different. So the volume in the Zoom Fly 6 is much lower. I actually almost thought this shoe was fitting short when I tried it on because I'm like, oh, this is like really like pushing on my toes. And that's because the height of the upper is much lower. It's much lower at the forefoot. It's much lower at the midfoot. So the instep's a little bit lower. So if you want a little more width, but a little bit less volume, Zoom Fly 6 is going to be really good. If you want a little bit less width, slightly more relatively snug in the forefoot, but you want a little bit more height, the Boston's going to be the better option because just is a little bit more height, it's a little bit more adjustable, but the upper is a little bit thicker. So if you want a lighter upper, Zoom Fly 6 is going to be better. If you want a little bit more structure and a little bit more material there, the Boston 12 is probably going to be a better option. I also like the Boston just a little bit more, only because there's a little less aggressive heel counter. There's certainly one back here, but there's a little bit more stiffness over in the Zoom Fly 6. If you want that stiffness, Zoom Fly 6 is going to be a little bit better. So both of them are excellent shoes. They're going to be really great workout and racing shoes for a huge part of the population that maybe super shoes aren't necessarily appropriate for, or maybe not good for as much mileage in as opposed to using these. And these are actually also great alternatives to use for training when you do race in super shoes because they are similar without being quite as overdone as some of those shoes. The things that are going to be really different again, Boston 12 is going to be a little bit more snappy and a little bit more bouncy, tiny bit relatively firmer. The Zoom Fly 6 is going to be slightly softer, a little bit more stiff, not quite as snappy, and a little bit better into those easy run paces, whereas this is going to be a little bit better into those faster paces. The fits are also different. You want a more anatomic fit with a little more width. Zoom Fly 6 is going to be better. If you're okay with a little pointed toe box, but still some room and a little bit more height, that's where the Boston 12 is going to be a little bit better. As I think I forgot to mention, the Boston 13 is also coming out really soon. Maybe I'm wrong. But when that comes out, I'll update this. But as of this time, these are very similar models. And I really, really want you to put in the comments below, if you have tried both, please let me know, do you agree or disagree with my comments? As always, the point of this stuff and both your comments are to help people try to figure out which shoe is going to work better for them so they can just enjoy their run and not have to worry about any other issues. And then last but not least, hope this helps because the purpose of this is to help you all figure out what's going to work best for you.